Hello, everybody. We're back with the Q&A sessions. As usual, I'm going to start with an outside question, and then we're going to switch to inside questions, if any. How do I actually use supply and demand to correct my price? You don't. I'm a business school graduate, and supply and demand is something that was drilled into me. But this is mostly relevant for products, mass-produced products in particular. Of course, there's supply and demand, and they do affect price of expertise in some way. But that does not mean that you can get any actual data on how much supply or demand there is in your area. That does not mean that even if you could get it or extrapolate it from other data, it can quickly change. And for professional services, averages are very unreliable. And the quality of the service can drastically change from one competitor to another. So a post is not a post. A legal opinion is not a legal opinion, right? It's not like a washed car. All washed cars are washed or they're unwashed, right? Code is not code. Code does not mean anything. I can write you code. It's going to be crap, but I can write it, right? Maybe. I can certainly Google it. And some of your competition who says that they're your competition, they're going to Google stuff that you really know how to do. Also, even if you could calculate the meeting of supply and demand, that would be meaningless to your client and their preferences. They need a problem solved within a budget, and you don't care, and they don't care how much it should cost. The question is how much it can cost in this specific instance. So you can safely drop the subject of supply and demand and start concentrating in where do individual lines of interest, not general lines of interest, intersect for both of you. So you can begin to shift that intersection point higher. That's all I have to say about that. Hi, Paul.
It reminds me about that discussion you have with a prospect, like a legal opinion, right? You go, oh, so okay, for that piece of work, it's $750. Okay. The guy around the corner says you can do it for $350. All right, you should go talk to him
then. It's true. And I would say also, this is a good instinct, because if you say, no, please don't go, you are already lost, right? Your willingness to lose a client speaks about your confidence about the quality of what you do. But also before they go, say, yeah, of course you should go talk to them, but just make sure that they're standing behind that price. This is not just a per hour thing, because they may be 3 times cheaper than me and 10 times slower than me. So you still could be paying more. So I'm standing behind my price. Just ask them if they're standing behind theirs. That's me harping on about worrying your client, right? Not unduly, but I think that's always a good idea if there's a chance that there's a pitfall out there that they don't know yet, that they don't recognize. And that's always a good bet, because experts clients are usually completely unskilled and unaware of any minor and insignificant, in our view, pitfalls that may be significant to them and not minor. Really? Oh yeah, that can happen. Right? Paul, do you have a question for me today?
Yes. Sometimes in discussion with prospects, you kind of get this idea that this person's a perfect match for you in terms of what you do, and they really, really need you, but they're not getting it. Somehow they're not saying, oh yeah, I'd like some of that. So you have this urge to tell them. I wonder what the most effective ways of handling that.
Oh, well, that's tricky, because you have a conflict of interest, and you being the expert doesn't change the fact that you have a conflict of interest. So
yes,
if somebody rings your doorbell and says, hello, mister, I'm a roofing expert, and boy, your roof sure looks like it really needs my attention. You should pay me a lot of money to solve the problem that I just saw, that you don't see. Because you can't see it, you're not a roofing expert, I am, right? You would probably not rush to shower that guy with money.
Yeah.
So the unfortunate answer that I have to give you here is you can tell them only indirectly. So you have to tell them in a way that they think they made that decision, not you. You can't make the decision for them. You can talk about, like I said, you can talk about pros. You can tell them a story. You can do that. You can say, your case reminds me of, and that guy was in real trouble because, and we solved it this way. And if they come to the conclusion, I'm just like that guy, that's on them. That's their conclusion, right? It's you saying it, not me, right?
Yeah.
You can do that. You can tell them a story. So that's one of the indirect ways that you can do that. Stories are powerful. That's something that gets trumpeted out every 2 minutes on the internet.
Yes.
But it's a way more effective way than you actually telling them. You can recognize them, you can tell them a story about a case that you had. Oh, really? Yeah. Well, it could be that you're a similar case. Yeah. So
I suppose it's a bit like asking a girl out on a date. You really, really need to go with me on a date.
Yes, it's a tricky situation. So it's not going to be that effective. You're really going to regret not to date with me. You're going to get police called on you, man. I mean, that's yeah. So indirectly, maybe by quoting facts, but facts can be dry. So maybe quoting facts in a fun way, maybe by telling a story, maybe by talking about a problem in a way that they see that you get it.
Yeah.
That you're not just saying, I can solve everything. I'm very smart. No, that doesn't mean anything, right?
Yes.
I build things out of wood. So if you need things built out of wood, I can make you a shed, a dog's house, a chair, a bridge, a house, whatever. Thanks.
Yes.
So
I suppose with the roof, you could tell them the solution. So I'm looking at your roof, and I don't know if you've noticed, but the right-hand side of it's got a damp patch in it or a dent or it. And so if you wanted to fix that, what you could do is get yourself an 8-foot ladder, do this and this and this, buy that from the hardware store. And then next month, paint the same thing with a coat of
I think
extraordinary super duper paint.
That's definitely a way. So you're saying you could do that yourself. And then they come to the conclusion, you know what? You're the roofing expert. Maybe you could do that for me. Oh, I suppose I could. So that may work. The direct approach will not.
Good. Cool. Thank you. That helps.
Why is market segmentation critical in value-based pricing? Okay. Value is subjective, which means that you have to understand where the value lies in the work that you do. So the value doesn't lie in you spending hours. The value lies in you solving a problem. And that means you have to understand it. And the broader your customer base, so the less specialized you are, the more guesswork you have to do with the value for each individual case. So market segmentation is critical because you need it to specialize, and without specialization, you're going to do much more guesswork. And when you do more guesswork, then it's harder for you to get it across to the client, to getting the client to see the value, which is a prerequisite for value-based pricing. It's a short answer, but I think it's what needs to be said here. So follow-up, why is it so hard to switch to value-based pricing? Often asked question. Billing and pricing sound like the same thing, but they're actually not necessarily the same thing. Because billing is an after the fact, almost passive act that puts the locus of the final cost out of the expert's control. So you're saying it's not my fault, right? Dear client, you asked me to do this, and also that happened, which we can all agree complicated things in an objective way. So per our agreed hourly rates, my bill can only be this. See? Calculated. It's not me saying it that this costs this much. It's an objective fact. So that's billing. That's not pricing. Pricing is an active process where you, so the expert, is the one, let's say, giving out judgment, meeting judgment in form of a price. So the price is inherently subjective instead of objective, like with billing. The problem is people are used to billing. And when thinking about switching to value pricing, what they're actually trying to do is value billing, which is an oxymoron of sorts. Because, like I said, there's no such thing as objective value, especially when we're talking about expert services. So if value is subjective and billing is an attempt to communicate objective things, right, like value, you get stuck trying to objectively express a subjective amount of value, which of course is extremely hard, or even more truthfully, mostly impossible. So you have billing drilled into you. You know how to do billing, you know the structure. And when you just try to insert value in there, just instead of hours, you get stuck because you can't objectively show a subjective thing. Or you can only if you have a very friendly, trustful client, which you have a great amount of respect, and they're basically going to pay you anything anyway. So that's not often. Anyway, I think most people struggle with switching to value-based pricing because of that. And of course, not everything should be value-based. It's all of the rage these days to talk about it, but a portfolio of different pricing methods is actually the most flexible and the most sensible option for most people. How do you feel about price discrimination? I often like to emphasize that what we are selling as experts are not potatoes. The point is that you can't price it like it's a commodity. Price discrimination, also known as selling the same thing for a different price to different customers, makes little sense as a term here, because you doing the same thing will not produce the same amount of value every time. So there's no reason not to have a different price every time, especially with the rise of services which are done globally, sold globally. Differences in purchasing power parity in the average paychecks, average cost of living, mean that the same price is also a very relative thing. Because if my price is always $1,000, that may be perceived as a steep price for somebody in Morocco, but not that steep for somebody from Spain. And it's the same price. No, it's not. No, it's not. For them, they see the price in very different ways. So even when you try not to have price discrimination, you most probably do have it if you're on a global market. I feel that price discrimination, I mean, when you put it like that, you can say price focus, or you can say many other marketing-y things. So price discrimination gets a bad reputation. But when we are talking about expert services, I think it's completely natural, because it's not cans of soup. Cans of soup can have different value to different people, but not really, not in a major way. What an expert does usually has a very different value each time he does it, even if he does exactly the same thing every time. I think that covers it. Thank you all. This has been a good rapid fire episode, I think, and I'll see you again in a week.
Everything changes.